New names, new faces, a bunch of first-time players on this week's Fantasy Ruckers Team of the Week, and what was some unexpected results and a handful of the matches that occurred in Week 12. And as we head into Part 2 of Bye-Mageddon in Week 13, we get you all prepared with your survival kit on what you should do on the waiver wire and in your lineup as we head into what will be a tough and pivotal week for fantasy managers. We also got the latest news and notes from around the league and go over Week 12 and look ahead and give our predictions in Week 13. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 109 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. With you each and every single week, Devin Vanderpool. I'm Ryan Yee. Matt Yee, not here this week. And I'm starting to get a correlation with you guys. That for some reason, after you have tough fantasy weeks, I find that there's a hangover in which you guys either call sick or call busy or one of the.
You tried to say I called it sick to work. Are you right now telling me?
This is your side gig, and maybe as the boss, I'm starting to think that you guys are playing a little bit of hooky when it comes to your responsibilities here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
I gotta go call HR real quick.
Too bad the Fantasy Ruckers doesn't have an HR department yet, but nonetheless, hey, thank you for joining us on episode 109. Like I mentioned, Matt Yee not here, but it's okay. We are going to pick up the slack that he's leaving behind. He did do the due diligence, I will say. I know, like we mentioned in the teaser, that this is part 2 of the Bye-Mageddon coming up, and there is some advice that people need to know. He's a man of the people, I'll admit, and he did send me some.
I won't go that far.
Some players for people to take a look at. So still doing the work here, even though he's not on the show. Got a jam-packed one for you, though, in this one. Had an interesting week. New names, new faces, like I said in the teaser, that are appearing here on our Team of the Week honorees for Week 12 in the performances that happened in Week 12. So we got to go over all of those. Good to see some first-time honorees happening. We've mentioned on the show before. It's as prestigious as a Oscar, I would say.
Yeah, it's up there.
It's up there. Maybe even put it up there with the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know.
Ooh.
I think Team of the Week honorees. It's
world
pretty good.
Changing. Yeah, pretty close.
But yeah, got some players to highlight there. I'll go over the exciting Week 12 that had some exciting matchups in there. A little bit of controversy in there as well. That I know had our Discord popping off a little bit, and of course we'll go over a waiver wire, some suggestions, some advice heading into the part 2 of Bye-Mageddon. Like I said, look into some of the latest news and notes, some injuries that we got to talk about, which is definitely a tough one here. And then again, we'll give our predictions looking ahead to what is a shortened match lineup in Week 13. But Vandy, pretty good week for you. Came out with the dub against your rival there in Slow and Steady, our community moderator, Stephen
It's hard
Mullen.
to say rival because I love him.
That's nice. That's really nice of you, man. That's the Canadian in you.
Yeah,
That's
maybe.
The Canadian
Maybe.
But hey, and I got the big dub too. A lot of smack talk going on between me and John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning. I think I put that to bed this week. Beating the number 1 seed here. I'm still trying to inch my way into playoffs. But hey, that's a big momentum changer there. So we'll see how that goes. But we're gonna break it all down now. Let's get right into it. But before we do, like we say every single week, if you aren't already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers. Handles up above, down below in the description. If you're listening on the pod, like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that good stuff there. It really helps us out both on the YouTube channel and on wherever you listen to this on podcasts. And if that's not all enough for you, join our Discord, link down below. Really fun community over there that gets to talk on game day, talk a little bit of MLR, fantasy MLR, everything that has to do with rugby that's going on in North America and beyond. And then also make sure you check out the fantasyruckers.com, AKP doing the God's work over there.
Yes, he is.
And looking really, really good here as we now approach the tail stretch of the season, which is crazy to think about, Vandy. The fact that we're heading into Week 13, we're basically, a third left? I mean, this season has been flying by.
Yeah, third. What, 18 weeks? 17 weeks?
18 weeks.
18
but
weeks.
Our final is in week 17.
And then
semi-final in week 16. So there's only 3 more weeks of or 4 more weeks of fantasy MLR matchups
13,
to get into
14,
the playoffs
15,
there.
Yeah.
So
okay. I got some work to do. I got some catching up to do.
Yeah, you got to go on a little bit of a hot streak here, but it's okay. We believe. But let's get into it. Let's start talking some news and notes here. And this is a tough news and notes to get off of, because I feel like now that we're heading into later portions of the season, Vandy, injuries
They always
are becoming happen. It's true, especially in the grueling haul. We've heard it with some of the interview guests that we've had on the show before. Andrew Coe, Jack McRogers, former Toronto Arrow player. We've heard it from Andrew Quattrin of the Free Jacks, who's dealing with a little bit of knocks himself. That it's a grueling season, the MLR season, going through those 18 weeks, and injuries are going to come up, and some big time players here that have some pretty big impact in the world of fantasy MLR. Having to go to the sideline here, and the first one is probably the biggest. Rickard Hadding taken off. Looked like it was a no contact. It looked like he was grabbing his heel. Don't want to speculate, but the first thing you think of there is the good old Achilles there.
Yeah.
And it's going to look. We'll wait to see some news, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in that lineup this coming week. And a guy that's basically one of the marquee back row players that you can count on a week in and week out basis is not probably going to be available for you for at least this week and possibly for some weeks to come. But we'll see the more information that comes out of that coming up this week. Only played in the 30 minutes until up to that injury this past week. Has had kind of an average season so far, but he always is one of those guys that can boom for one of those big time double-digit performances. He did that in round 7 with 22 and a half. Has kind of been tapering off since then. But yeah, just a big time loss for the fantasy managers who own Rickard Hadding.
Yeah, you know what? Even though he's been kind of down, he's still a guy you trust every weekend, put in your lineup. But the thing about not speculating Achilles, but that's a long injury. That's an injury that you got to look at. This changes the draft for next year.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point. That's a good point. But even as we look at to the tail end of the season, Vandy, I mean,
more important things on the horizon for sure.
Sure. But I guess what my point being is, even if it's not an Achilles, right? It's still non-contact, which is one that's
never good.
Which is never good, exactly. So even if he's out the next month, I mean, for fantasy managers, like on the optimistic side of things, you're not going to have him going into these final weeks. And I think we had a situation similar. I forget which player it was last year, but it's like, are you now going to trust Rickard Hadding
if he comes
back? If he does come back, you know what I mean? Like if he comes back for your semifinal matchup, are you trusting the fact that he's 100% to perform for you in the most crucial weeks of the fantasy season? It's an interesting conversation to have.
And that's always one, no matter what, you pick the wrong one.
I know.
You bench him, he pops. You play him, he doesn't. Very rarely it feels you ever make the right one.
And that's fantasy for you. That's fantasy for you. You got to learn the hard way. But we'll keep an eye out for news. As of right now, no information necessarily has come out. We can just go based off what we saw in the broadcast, and it was a tough one, what we saw in the broadcast there. Another tough one, though, in the RFC Los Angeles Anthem Rugby Carolina game, Tarangatira Waitokia. He's having a solid match, had the try there, played about 60 minutes. And again, wasn't too sure if it was, I don't think it was non-contact, but he did need to get help coming off the field. And he was essentially, wasn't carted off, but he was carried off by the trainers. Again, one that we're waiting to hear more information about, but another big name. He's the leading #1 player heading into after round 12. He is the #1 fantasy MLR player. I mean, I know we've been talking about Reese McDonald. We've been talking about
injuries to him.
Stingling. We've been talking about all injuries these guys. And yeah, it's interesting how it's like that. But Tarangatira Waitokia right now is the #1 fantasy MLR player, and he may be injured. At least for this coming week with what we saw. But the good thing is, though, Anthem is on bye. They're part of that Bye-Mageddon. So maybe the extra week of rest will help him stay fit. So it's not like you weren't going to have him this week anyways, but we're going to have to wait out for some news on that. But it is crazy, though, Vandy, that like a lot of the majority of guys that have been at the top have been injured, and maybe it's a curse. We're talking about now Turangatiro Waitokia, but you mentioned it. Reese McDonald, he's been injured. He'll be coming back in the coming weeks, is what the latest updates are. Michael Manson injured. He was one of the top weight players. Jason Potros, I mean, hasn't hit the top there, but he was the marquee fly half basically. And he's injured as well. I mean, now you're looking at guys like Wayne Vanderbank, who's at the top, who's been having a stellar season, who we'll get into a little bit more. And hey, your boy Joel Hodgson is starting to kind of approach back up there with the performances he's been having, moving up into that top 3 spot there of players that have been having a pretty good season. But it's kind of funny. I shouldn't say funny. That's probably the bad word to use. But
the
I mean,
worst word
it's tough to see that
But the thing is,
guys are getting injured.
Every year you sit here and you go, "There's more injuries this year than any other year." You know,
I know.
You forget the past. You know, it's just it's similar to football. It's just a brutal, grueling game, and you know, it's not that so much. It's always the best players go out. It's because they're the best players. They're getting the ball the month. They're going into the tough areas. You know, and hard to play a full season in rugby.
It is very, very true. Again, grueling season, like we said. But hey, let's shift on over to some more positive news here. Some signings and some trades happening. Again, we talked about it last week that it was the kind of pseudo sign and trade deadline that we're not really quite sure if it's real, if it's fake.
Fugazi.
Fugazi is the word that Maddie used last episode. It did come and go, apparently last Tuesday. And didn't really see anything big. We were kind of sitting on the edge of our seat to see if maybe there's a big time signing that we've seen in years past, but nothing really taking place here. But I guess we'll have to continue to hold our breath to see if whether or not this sign and trade deadline is really a real thing, and watch there be some massive signing here. But it's a good thing on my end. I mean, I don't have the fab to spend. That was kind of the theme of last week's episode. I don't have the fab to spend on a big time guy, so kind of was able to take a deep breath there. Couldn't let the richer get more rich. With a big guy coming through that had fab dollars. But there was a signing, though, that Anthem Rugby Carolina did. The signing of Italian center Sebastian Zaridze. I think that's right. Italian, trying to put the little bit of flair on that. The former Italy U18 man joins from Rugby Lions Piacenza in the Italian top 10, where he played for the previous 2 years, according to Jam Delay of MLR stats. He joins Anthem Rugby Carolina. So a foreign guy coming to Anthem Rugby Carolina, which is interesting to see. I know that they're a team that's pretty decent at the center position. I mean, Turangatiro Waitokia has been playing at the wing as of late, but he has made the appearances at center. Just pulling up the...
You know what? And the thing is, it's actually a decent timing for that signing because they are on bye, so it gives them a little bit more time to get up to speed and everything.
Yep. No, that's a great point. I mean, we've seen Matteo Gadsden, Junior Goffa are guys that are obviously big for them at the center position. We've seen Kel Hodgson at the center position. We've seen Turangatiro Waitokia at the center position. Junior Goffa scoring the try. So we'll see. We'll see where Zaridze goes into that lineup, and we'll keep an eye on that. But you're right, though, on a bye week, we'll see. We'll have the time to kind of adjust there going through, and then a couple trades happening, not really that fantasy relevant, but something to put as of note. Chicago receiving the loan of Nicholas Rival Pitt for the remainder of the 2024 season, the front rower from the Dallas Jackals for you could probably guess salary cap considerations. And again,
there's another Fugazi there.
I know. Hey, your Vandy, your team is taking part in the Fugazi-ness. Salary cap considerations going to Utah for the college draft rights of Abe Turpin, who was drafted 22nd overall by the Utah Warriors in 2023. He now his rights now go to the NOLA Gold, the flanker. Again, 2 trades that I don't think will really have that much impact on fantasy. And again, for that Zaridze signing, you want to just keep an eye out on how that has an impact on the depth chart of that center positions. And maybe that is coming at a good time with the bye and also some injuries happening with the Anthem squad. And then last little bit of news that I want to throw in here, Vandy, and as good Canadian boys that we are, we got to give a shout out. And, the men's team, when it comes to Rugby Canada, may not be doing so hot, but damn, the women's team is looking good, because in the first time in the history of the women's program, they beat New Zealand 22-19, and they take the Pacific 4 series with that first ever historic win. Fantastic, huge, massive.
Dude, over New Zealand?
It's big, man.
You know what? Like, when we were in college and you were showing me rugby, that was the only rugby I knew of. is New Zealand All Blacks.
Yep. So yeah, they the women's team, Vandy, is called the Black Ferns. What they call them over in New Zealand. And yeah, but not to be matched with Rugby Canada, who get crowned the Pacific 4 Series champion. They beat the former World Cup champs, New Zealand Black Ferns. Hey, the men's team may not be looking good, like I said, but the women's team surely is. And this is exciting ladies, stuff. Man.
Getting it done. Beautiful work.
Absolutely. So had to kind of fit that in there. All right. Well, this has got me all pumped up now, Vandy, for our favorite part of the show. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All right. Hear ye, hear ye. Here is Supreme Commissioner Yee with the Fantasy Ruckers League's update. And I mean, let's get right into it. Matt's not here, so this makes this even more fun. So I can't hear his boasting about how well he does and his head getting bigger and bigger on this show. So on the one show that he decided to skip out on, he's our weekly challenge winner. He got 49.1 fantasy points there in our weekly challenge. I came second. Vandy, what do we say every single week? What do you do every single week? Consistency with your mediocrity. And
I don't get it. I don't get it.
11th position.
How you score 60 points? I don't get it.
It is quite funny, Vandy. You consistently every single week are right between that 8th and 12th spot.
It's not
every week.
Man.
Every week in the weekly challenge.
I don't get how you guys get so many points.
What can I say? So yeah, Maddie with the 59.1, myself with 53.6. And hey, we got to give a shout out because it's not all about us here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show, Vandy. We got to share the love with the people and our wonderful supporters who are listening and watching the show. Corleone, 48.6 this week. He's our highest community member that finished in our weekly challenge. He scored 48.6. Yeah, there you go. So I guess that's one thing that you can make sure that if you score higher than 10th, your odds are pretty good in beating our very own Devin Vandy Vanderpool.
I don't know what I'm doing on this thing. I'll be honest.
That's okay.
I can't pick them. I don't know how I pick them.
It's a learning experience, and that's probably why. And I guess we should have said this at the top of the show. That's why we had to throw you a bone. We had to give you a full segment. We had to create a segment around you because you were just getting too beat by everything else. That we had to create a segment so that you could win a little bit, right? We can't.
Are you calling me a charity?
We've said that before on the show. I'm pretty sure.
You guys are ruthless, gutless.
But that's why we throw you the Triple D segment because you win at sports betting, at least so far.
Barely.
But either way, though, winning is winning, and we'll get into that segment at the end of the show. But we thought, give you a little bone here. The weekly challenge wasn't working, so and the normal fantasy isn't working as of yet. You're still learning, so we'll give you something that you do know how to do. It's okay, Vandy.
If I could say a word, I was going to say it.
Hey, the Fantasy Ruckers, Vandy, is a 4-year program, right? Well, you haven't got your degree yet.
What happens after next year? Do I get kicked?
Well, so that's actually quite funny. So I was actually talking. I was back in Canada this past weekend, and I was talking with family about the Fantasy Ruckers Show, and we were talking to them about the whole concept of this show, about how we brought you on as kind of our guinea pig and teaching you rugby through the lens of fantasy. And we're like, we're boasting you up. We're like, man, yeah, he's learned a lot. Like since he's first started, Vandy has because shout out to Nana Chung, grandma of me and Matthew, who watches our show, watches our show every single week. Love you, Nana. And she was saying, oh yeah, Devin Vanderpool is great. So we had to talk to you about why you're on the show because we said you don't play rugby. So we're like, hey, what the heck is going on? And we're like, oh yeah, no, he's actually doing really, really well. Like he's learned a lot. Like he impresses us on the show. He talks about strategies. And I know people in our Discord have been talking about how they've seen the growth of you, Vandy, which makes us so proud.
Let's go.
But then one of my cousins was like, so does that mean like after the season, like you got to boot him? Like you got to fire him to find someone that's not good anymore? I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe after he graduates, we got to give you the cap and gown and have you move on. So long story short, Vandy, we're proud of you with how much you've learned. But at the same time, we may have to start taking job applications for bigger rookies. So we'll see. Nonetheless, though, Vandy, 11th place. So if you keep doing crappy here in the weekly challenge, we have to keep you on because we haven't done our job. Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, you guys failed as teachers. I got to go back again.
Yeah, exactly. We got to turn that.
Let's go.
Yeah, we got to turn into a 5-year program. All right. And then got us heading out. We do it every single week on the show here. Shout out our top fantasy performer of the week. No triple digit scores this week, which is crazy. I mean, I feel like we've been having weeks recently where we're like, over like 50 or like over 5 or 6 people that have gone like at least 100 points.
Oh, yeah, for
and
sure.
This week, our highest, 99.2.
It's pretty
Fighting
close.
Beavers of the Lil Naughty's Deep Dish League. It is true, but no one else was the next highest was probably like low 90s, high 80s. Surprising in a week. So shout out to Fighting Beavers of the Lil Naughty's Deep Dish League for scoring our highest fantasy point performance of the week here with 99.2. Pretty cool.
It's because RFCLA played Anthem. That's why.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Well, Van, you ready to talk a little bit about week 12?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. 2 teams on bye this week, Miami Sharks and Old Glory DC. We started off with a late matchup of the late weekends of matches. Usually for the past couple weeks, we've been having some Friday night matches, a couple Friday night matches. This week, didn't start the matches until Saturday, and we opened up with, once again, you guessed it, Anthem Rugby Carolina taking on RFC Los Angeles. And boy, oh boy, were they so close. So close.
Once again, good money.
I did the same thing. I thought if there was going to be one that the Anthem could win, especially looking a little bit better, was going to be this one.
Yep.
They came off to a flying start. They had the lead late in the game. But Los Angeles coming through there, I believe, with past the 70th minute mark to take it 33-29. Anthem Rugby Carolina continues to be defeated this season so far at 0-11. RFC Los Angeles coming back with, I think, back-to-back wins now at 3-6-2. They're kind of stepping up, and it was pretty solid. But man, so close for Anthem Rugby Carolina. I don't think
any team wants to be the team to lose to them. I think that's what it is.
You play your best
game against Anthem, even when they're playing their best games. It's like we can't be them.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, I think if they're not winning that one where they were so close to winning, I don't think they're going to win. They got 7 more weeks to do it. That beat Utah.
They're gonna do it.
That'd be funny. That'd be fine. I got to pull up when they face them next. That'd be pretty jokes. But you're right though. It seems like fantasy point guys like to show up against Anthem Rugby Carolina. But we've had fantasy point scorers on both sides of the aisle there on both teams here. So let's talk about some team of the week honorees in this matchup. Got to give a shout out to our basically player of the week who started at fly half, though surprisingly not on the Los Angeles side, on the Anthem side, who scored a whopping 26.5 points starting at the fly half position. Cliven Laubser gets a big one here, his highest of the season, his second double-digit point performance of the year. Second fly half start after last starting at fly half in week 10. Goes 3 conversion kicks, 1 penalty kick. But listen to this. 158 meters gain, adds a try. He would have had 2 tries. He would have had 2 tries, got 1 called back. And that steal that he had to score, I know a majority of his meters gained were from that steal, that interception that he got, but he still did. And Cliven Laubser, I mean, I picked him up heading into this week because I needed a fly half. Man, I thoroughly enjoyed having Cliven Laubser at my back 3 position because he's back 3 eligible, getting that 26.5 points at that fly half position.
Yeah, Utah sure misses him.
Yeah. A couple other guys on the Anthem side. Like I mentioned, Tarangatir Waitokia, before he got injured, had a pretty solid performance at the back 3-11 spot. 17 fantasy points for him with 98 meters gained, a try, 9 tackles. I mean, this guy, like I said, best fantasy player to this point so far this season.
Yep.
He's basically hovered around the triple-digit meters gain mark, basically 4 or 5 times this year, which is incredible at both the center position and the back 3 position. He even has a fly half start last week.
Yep.
And he's gone 3 straight games with double-digit fantasy point performances. He's only gone 1 game out of all the games that he started where he hasn't scored above double digits. I mean, Tarangatir Waitokia has been having an electric fantasy season, and hopefully he's okay and continues to do so for fantasy managers.
Well, when you can get 10 tackles in 100 meters, the try is just icing on top.
Yeah. Absolutely. And not even getting that 70-minute bonus point with that injury. So we'll see there. And then a couple of other Anthem guys mentioned, Junior Gaffa scoring a try, 12.8 fantasy points for him. And Michael Mafu in his second straight start for the Anthem, his first double-digit fantasy point performance with 12.4, 71 meters gained, 16 tackles for Mafa. Over on to the RFC LA side, it's a couple team of the week honorees to dish out for them. Jordan Chait. He was both Maddie and myself starts of the week, and he shows up there. It looks like Jordan Chait is going to be the guy to own there. His first start of the season after being on the reserves last week, and he went 66 meters gained, a try assist, 4 tackles, and he was beautiful from the boot, 2 conversion kicks, 3 penalty kicks. It looks like if you were one of those fantasy managers that have been holding on to Jordan Chait, and I know there are several of you out there, it looks like it might pay off at this point in the season because kickers are hard to come by. And Chait looks like he's going to be the guy. I know Dan Hollinshead is dealing with injury. We'll see what that means for RFCLA this coming week. But as they take on San Diego, which we'll preview. But Jordan Chait, I mean, a solid fantasy point performance for him as our fly half team of the week honoree.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And then another couple RFCLA guys to mention, Semi Kunatani. I mean, this guy has been having also an incredible fantasy season.
Yes, he has, man.
He's gone ever since round 2. He's had at least 12.1 fantasy points every single week.
And he didn't even start this week.
He didn't even start this week. But he did play a lot of minutes, 55 minutes, 62 meters gained, but he had 2 tries. Now it's 3 straight games with tries.
Yep.
I mean, Semi Kunatani, he's one of the premier back row players in fantasy right now. Has 120 fantasy points on the season. Yeah, Kunatani looking really good. And then just a couple more RFCLA guys. Brooklyn Hardiker in his first start of the year, I believe. No, apology. Third start of the season. Haven't seen him since round 9. 54 meters gained, gets his first try of the season. He scores 12.1 fantasy points. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the fun thing is that with these two teams, both of them are kind of towards what people would imagine as kind of bottom tier teams when it comes to the MLR.
Yep.
And they just love to score against each other. And it might not be the most competitive in terms of the skill level of rugby, like not the premier, and it's not a match that you're going into being, oh, this is the match of the week. But as fantasy managers, you put it up there as one of the matches of the week because you know there's going to be so many points to be had in these games when you're scoring above 50 points on the scoreboard there for between the RFCLA and Anthem Rugby Carolina. So I know for me, I had a lot of Anthem and LA guys in my line because I thought this was going to be a scorcher with a bunch of points, and it proved to be right.
Dude, LA's back row is insane. Between Jason Dam, Kunatani, and then Michael Amiris. Those 3 guys, I would say I bet you all 3 are in the top 10 for back row fantasy points.
Back row? We'll have to check you on that. But I know after that solid week of Jason Dom last week, I mean, man, yeah, pretty solid there. All right, let's as you check that, Vandy, let's
he's 12th. Amiris is 12. Okay.
Close. He's right there. So we'll see whether or not he can start bolstering that. But let's go on over now to our next Saturday matchup. We had 2 at 8 p.m. But let's start off and get it out of the way, Vandy, because I know this one's a tough one for you. But the NOLA Gold taking on the Utah Warriors at home. And once again, one of the same storylines as last week that you mentioned. NOLA Gold scoring the first 21 points. It wasn't until the 65th minute where Nick Suchon scored that maul try. And at least put Utah on the board. So just another kind of dominant performance there against the Utah Warriors, who are really struggling between their injuries and just trying to figure it out offensively. Just been a tough string of matches here for your Utah Warriors, Vandy.
Yeah, the whole slow starts are pretty tough. I mean, we had some we had kind of a different lineup. Injuries are getting us. It was hot in NOLA, so don't want to make excuses coming from Utah to NOLA. Not making excuses there, but you just gotta get off to a better start. I mean, NOLA was dealing with their own injuries, like Reese Botha started at 10. But honestly, it's just the mistakes, it's the turnovers. Joel Hodgman's at least good. I think he was perfect from the boot, but pretty easy when you're only scoring 2 tries.
Yeah. So, but there are some team of the week honorees to dish out in this one, Vandy. None on the Utah side, but there were solid fantasy performances on Utah's side. Hey,
Caleb,
your boy, Caleb McEnany. He's now gone basically five of his last 6 matches. He scored in double digits. 4 of the last 5, he scored above 13.2 fantasy points. He's coming off of his season high in this loss, 19.2 fantasy points, 187 meters gained. And that's what you drafted Caleb McEnany for.
That's what
just like consistency from the meters gain standpoint. You don't need to be relying on the volatile try scoring. He only has 1 try in the season, but like this is what you bank on. You get a triple digit meters gain performance. You can expect at least 10 fantasy points from him, and possibly the 80 minutes bonus point played. And you're guaranteed basically 11 points from him. And I eat my words. I said that you could drop this guy. Do not drop this guy. Caleb McEnany. If there's any bright spot when it comes to a fantasy perspective from this Utah Warriors squad, Caleb McEnany is one of them. And
again,
and
it was good to see the CK back. He played really good. You know, it's good to have that veteran presence.
17.5 fantasy points for him, 158 meters gained, and then 4 tackles to add to that. So yeah, I mean, you've been wanting CK back in the lineup. That's why it had me optimistic in choosing Utah over NOLA this past week.
Yeah,
but they proved me wrong. They still got a lot of stuff to figure out. And it's interesting because the top 3 fantasy performers in this match were all Utah guys, but didn't come up to win. The other guy to add here is Isaiah Cruz, which is cool to kind of add there because he's kind of filling in now with the injured Michael Manson into that back 3 consistent 14 position there. 126 meters gained for him with the full 80 played for 13.8 fantasy points. So Isaiah Cruz, he might be a guy that he's on bye this week with Utah, but might be a long-term option depending on how long Michael Manson. Now it seems like Isaiah Cruz is kind of establishing himself there with that injury. But nonetheless, we got to give out our team of the week honorees on the NOLA Gold side. We got to start it off, Vanny, and I think you want to spend some time on this guy. Was our front row team of the week player, Jared Adams, with 11.3 fantasy points. And what a try by Jared Adams.
I got to shout it out. I love the big man try. You know, even though it's against the boys, you still get a little fired up.
Look like a back.
Man, I think he made 5 guys miss. Like,
props don't do that. They're not supposed to do that.
Dude, I had flashbacks of Marshawn Lynch from football. Like, it was that crazy. It was like he applied lubricant to himself and just stepped everyone, man-moded into the end zone. I mean, beauty try.
Yeah. And a majority of his 43 meters gained coming off of that try. But again, you can't blame the big boy for doing that. He scored the try as well. 10 tackles on top of that for 11.3 fantasy points in total, which is good to see from Jared Adams. And again, he did not look like a number 1 on there. Add the other 1 on there. He should be an 11 with a try like that. So we'll see. But he's
I don't know anything, but you test that guy after that game. That's all I got to say.
And then the other team of the week honoree to hand out from the NOLA side is Malcolm May, a second row player, 10.1 fantasy points.
Let's go.
Started with a try, added 14 tackles on top of that. Led to that 10.1 fantasy point mark, which is great to see. A couple other guys to shout out here. Hunga Havili, 11.5 fantasy points for him. I know he was a waiver wire pickup for Maddie for last week. And Taniela Filimone of NOLA Gold, 13.1 fantasy points for him. Had another solid showing there. He's now gone 4 straight weeks with double-digit fantasy points. All right, let's go on to the same time, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time, the last game on Saturday. This was probably what many would consider one of the matchups of the week. Houston Sabercats taking on the Chicago Hounds. And Chicago, kind of like Anthem Rugby Carolina, they had it. They had the lead. And then Houston, as persistent and as just hardened they are with that 10-1 record, able to work their way back and take it in the end by 1 point with a later match try and take it 23-22. Man, this Houston Sabercats team, I think you just can't bet against them for the rest of the season until they prove that they can lose. Yeah, they are looking like the favorites heading into this playoff round, and they're by far the best team. Well, in the MLR right now, you can't argue how they do it.
No,
it might not be pretty all the time, but I mean that 10-1 record says differently.
And you know what, Chicago? I don't know what it is. They just look so good in their losses too. When they play a good team, they look so good in their losses.
And I think what's going to kill them too, Vandy, is like that slow start.
That slow start,
right? Because they're at right now a 5-5-1 record. I mean, they're still looking pretty in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
Again, not as competitive as the Western Conference. But they're sitting in third place right now. Somehow the NOLA Gold now at 6-4, sitting in second place when we thought that they were absolutely horrendous. But somehow they've decided to win the back couple games here. But in Chicago in that third playoff spot. And I mean, if they maybe started off with this game plan a little bit earlier on, that 5-5-1 record maybe looks more like a 7-3-1 or an 8-6 record. You know what I mean? Like it might just look a little bit, or sorry, an 8-5 record. You just never know. But nonetheless,
it looked good though. Like I'm pretty sure they won on lineouts. The scrum looked good. They were able to build phases. And that's exactly what I want to see. Houston's a great team. So, you can't really fault them. They gave it the all. But and then they'll play somebody at level with them, and then they won't even look half as good next week.
Yeah, and I mean they scored some nifty tries there too. I mean Adrian Carl setting up a couple of those grubber kicks for Nate Augsburger and Julian Dominguez for one of each of their double-digit try performances there. So that was pretty to see.
Neither team was really good off the boot, to be honest. They were missing conversions left, right, and center.
So let's dish out some Team of the Week honorees. The only Team of the Week honoree in this one, though, is Andre Warner with that nifty little scrum half cheeky try. Scored me and Maddie have scored a couple of those. Look like that. Maybe not as good, but in our heyday.
Show me the film.
There definitely is no film. 8.8 fantasy points, 20 meters gained, 6 tackles, and a try on top of that. I mean, Andre Warner as a scrum half position, like just consistently 7 to 9 fantasy points, like 7 to 8 fantasy points. He has those low games like every scrum half has. And he couldn't reap the rewards against the Anthem team that they faced last week, with Jay Renton getting the start there. But I mean, Andre Warner he's pretty consistent for you, which is what you like to see from the scrum half position.
Third in scrum halves overall. So I mean, it's exactly
who's first. Who's first?
Take a guess.
Connor Tupai.
Nailed it.
Connor Tupai. How many points does he have?
He's at 78.6, Luke Campbell 69, and Andre Warner 67.
Luke Campbell in second spot.
Yes,
what is this NOLA Gold team? I mean, like talk about mirages to the max. You know what I mean? Like when you hear NOLA Gold, you're just like, no, I don't want any piece of that. And then you're hearing, oh crap, they're second place in the Eastern Conference. Oh crap, they've won the last, I think, 2 in a row. Yep. Oh crap, Luke Campbell is second overall in scrum half position. Like
they get points from everywhere. Like some weeks it's all their wings get points. Some weeks it's like this week was all forward pack.
And that's why the sentiment every week, Vandy, is that there's always fantasy value to be had on every single team.
That's right.
Even if you're as bad as the Anthem, there's always fantasy points to be had.
Oh hell yeah!
If you're as bad as NOLA, or I should say now if you're as good as NOLA, I guess. But either way, some other big time fantasy point scores in this one. We got 15.8 fantasy points from Samu Smith. He was in my weekly challenge lineup, his second start in a row, starting at the 14 position. This might be a guy you take a look at. Houston's on bye this upcoming week, but I mean, back-to-back weeks where he scored above 80 meters gained, first try of the season. I mean, if you just want a piece of this Houston offense, Samu Smith. We'll see whether or not he's a consistent part of that Houston offense. Nate Augsburger again with his 2 tries. Only had the 50 meters gained there, but 2 tries to his name. Pretty solid. Again, another Nate Augsburger experience. He's just always lethal for getting these multi-digit try performances, which is fun. Don McKenna 12.7. AJ Alatimu, pretty solid there with the 12.4 that he had, 1 conversion, 2 penalty kicks, and then Adrian Carlos on the other side of it with the 31 meters gained, 85 minutes played, and the 1 conversion kick for him, and the 10 tackles. And then lastly, like we mentioned, Julian Dominguez with the double-digit try. He scored. He did receive that yellow card, I believe, but 62 minutes, 2 tries. 57 meters gain, which kind of hampered his performance. But fun one between Houston and Chicago. Again, just Chicago couldn't get it done.
Shout out Chicago, man. Good. I don't know. I think they're a good team.
All right, you're buying in on the Chicago stocks. All right, let's get into the first match of Sunday, Vandy, and this one that has we talked about controversy at the top. Let's get it out of the way because man, the Discord was blowing up. And we had no idea what the heck was going on. But after some further Fantasy Ruckers research, we finally figured it out. But allegedly, the New England Free Jacks won this match 24-23 after it was initially reported and saw on the broadcast that with the last minute 86-minute try that San Diego won it 25-24. But let's straighten out the storyline for everyone there.
That's right.
So after some looking in, it looks like the broadcast got it wrong, where they accounted for a conversion kick that didn't happen earlier. So going into that last try, they actually had the score 24-20, not 24-18. And to be fair, when I rewatched the broadcast in the stadium, it does have the correct score in there. So at least we're getting that point. The scoreboard and the scorekeepers at the stadium are getting right. It was just, there was some miscommunication there when it came to the broadcast. So with that last minute try, they ended up moving up being at 18 to 23 points. So they could win it with the conversion kick. And at least on the rerun of the broadcast cuts out before the kick even happens.
You got a different angle?
Which is pretty whack. So, but according to the reports, they did not get it. New England ends up winning this one 24-23. Before we get into the game, though, just imagine if that happened in like a bigger sport. Like, this is the little stuff for Major League Rugby to really be taken seriously. They got to get this stuff. You got to clean. You can't make those mistakes. I mean, a majority of people are watching this from home, right?
Well, the worst part is even if you're watching a rerun of it, you miss it.
Yeah.
It's not available to even watch. It's like,
and I mean, but then again, even having the score wrong too. I mean, they still have the score up there where it's showing that San Diego is winning. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, with that try, you're probably, if you're a San Diego fan and you see them score that try and then you're up 25-24, you're like, oh yeah. You didn't counter correct. Now, if you're counting at home, maybe you already knew that the score was wrong. But
even that's infuriating. You're yelling at the TV.
Yeah. So anyways, 24-23, New England wins it. Our wallets are happy, Vanny, because we'll get into it in the Triple D segment.
You know what?
I was sweating.
I wasn't going to say anything because I was going to touch on it later, but it is crazy that somehow Vegas got it. Because it seemed like it was wrongfully input or whatever, but then instantly as soon as the game ended, I got my money. I'm like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah. So interesting. But again, the Legion kind of back and forth battle between this one. It was a fun one here between these two sides. But New England, again, kind of really powering it through. Had, I believe, the late yellow card there that made it tough. But they just get the victory at the end, 24-23. Team of the week honorees here in this match. San Diego side, back row of the week, Tapua Ofungia, scoring the 17.2 fantasy points that he scored in this matchup. Pulling it up here. The one try, but 90 meters gained, 14 tackles. It's funny because Maddie has said on the show before that Tapua Ofungia has this kind of performance every single year, once a year.
Yep, once a year.
You got to start talking about it. I think we're going to talk about it in our Waiver-Wire segment. He's now coming off back-to-back weeks where he has now more than 17 fantasy points.
Yeah,
the full 80 minutes.
If he starts, he's usually pretty good for you.
That's true. So we'll see. San Diego is one of those teams that's playing in this Bye-Mageddon. So we'll see whether or not they're there. But a couple other big-time players in this one, on top of Tapua Ofungia, you got to give credit to Thomas Awake, getting the 120 meters gain, a try, 88 minutes played that he had in the tries with 9 tackles. 120 meters and that try. This is why I had Awake up there as one of my kind of top premier players of the year. And he hasn't really shown it this year. He has 4 fantasy performances in the double digits. But this is his biggest of the year. So it's reassuring to see as San Diego is now starting to become competitive.
Yep.
And really kind of trying to figure out here and maybe not to the same extent they were last year. But Awake is kind of reaping the rewards here, at least in this past week, 21.7 fantasy points for him. Wayne Vanderbank, though.
I just want to put it in there that San Diego has actually looked really good since Gateau and that's when Nanu came back at the same time. So I think that was 2 or 3 weeks now that they've looked pretty solid with those guys, back in the lineup.
Gateau coming off the bench last week, I believe, starting this week in the lineup, which was good to see. So yeah, now that he's a part of there, I mean, Gateau 7.3 fantasy points for him. We'll see how fantasy relevant he becomes. But a couple other guys, Wayne Vanderbank, Vandy. I mean, this guy, 2nd overall in fantasy scores. Who would have guessed that would have been Wayne Vanderbank?
He's electric, man.
We thought going into the season, and I think Maddie's been quoted with this, is that we thought the premier, once Leroux Milan became healthy again, the premier center position would have been Leroux Milan, Ben Lesage. Wayne Vanderbeek has
in
emerged
that
as a
same
guy.
breath, though, LaRue Milan hasn't been healthy. You know what I mean? He's never really had the ability to take or to not let Wayne shine because he's never really strung together consistent weeks.
Been in and out of the lineup, but now I guess the thing to say though too, Vandy, to add to that,
is he keeping him out of the lineup?
That's true, but also that there have been pairings where LaRue Milan and Wayne Vanderbeek have played at the same time and started on the same lineup, and it's been Wayne Vanderbeek that has outshined him every single time.
Mm-hmm. But if he's constantly in and out of the lineup, is he really that healthy?
It's true. It's true. Hasn't scored lower than 12.8 fantasy point or 10.4 fantasy points, I should say. Has 8 straight double-digit fantasy point performances. In the last 5 weeks, he hasn't scored lower than 13.1. 18.8 in this one, 109 meters gain, a try, and 8 tackles. I mean, Wayne Vanderbeek, like at the end of the season, when we're reflecting on it, like this guy might be one of the steals of the year. Like we didn't mention him. We didn't mention him in our midseason awards, but man, Wayne Vanderbeek, I wish we saw this guy. I think there's just so much value to be had in this New England Free Jacks center pairing. And if you can find that right guy, and it seems like this year's Wayne Vanderbeek, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Just incredible. A couple other guys here to highlight in this matchup. Tupua Fungia, like we mentioned, 17.2 as the back row of the week. Daniel Morgan Pudarangi, 16.1. Ryan James, 12.9. And Piers Von Daddleson, 12.8 for the Free Jacks in this one. All right, last matchup of the week that we got to highlight, probably ending off with probably the least exciting one, but a defensive performance nonetheless. Dallas Jackals coming up with the upset win over the Seattle Seawolves. We believe, baby. We frigging believe. And I was going to say, maybe the Dallas Jackals want me off of their Den Dogs membership and their fan train because they've lost every match since I've declared that maybe the Dallas Jackals are my team that I'll be following here. But they come with the upset win. And Dallas, we've said in the past, Vandy, hasn't done it defensively. No. They're an offensive team.
Yep.
And that's what they did against the Seattle Seawolves. They did it in a defensive fashion. From a fantasy perspective, you're not quite happy about that with only 21 points scored overall in the 14-7 win for Dallas. Not much fantasy points had, but Dallas showing that they can do it in a different way.
Well, you got to give them a huge shout out because Novan, how do you say?
Vogan
Isaacs. They had him 4 yellow cards, lost in lineouts, lost in scrums, and still pulled off the victory.
Just gritty.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Dallas been dealing with some of those injuries. Yeah, you're right.
More penalties too. It's insane. Absolutely insane.
Seattle just not looking that great again. And again, they're kind of I guess without Riekert Hatting now, it's going to be an interesting question to be had here going forward. They do play this upcoming week. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of bounce back from this one. But from a fantasy side, no team of the week honorees in this one, but there were some notable guys. Again, hard to get that when you only have 21 points scored. Devon Rousseau looking pretty solid, 19.4 fantasy points. Back-to-back weeks now where he's gone 19.4 exactly on the dot. 130 meters gained, though, in this one. A try scored here. He's now back-to-back games where he scored 3 tries in the last 2 matches, 4 tries in the last 4 matches for his total of 4 tries in the season. Thomas Kubia for Dallas looking good. He's now starting to establish himself in the lineup. He might be a guy that you're starting to look at. 16.1 fantasy points for him. Another 103 meter gained performance as he now inserts himself back in that Dallas Jackals lineup. I know Nick Ben was one of Maddie's waiver wire pickups, 13.4 fantasy points for him. And then on the Seattle side, Tony Pulu, 10.3. Hugh Taylor, 10 fantasy points. Again, not many big time fantasy scores in this one. But yeah, Seattle shocking us here going forward.
Yeah. I mean, shout out Dallas. Shout out Dallas. That's incredible.
5-5 now in the season. Seattle drops to 8-3.
And you know what? That's a healthy Seattle lineup too.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost Riekert, but you know, Dan Creel played, Pulu's in, Mac Mason, Smith, Devon Rousseau, like they're all there.
And they're right now there. And then that's a big time win with San Diego losing and them winning. They now jump up into that second spot in the Western Conference with the more points total that they have, despite having the worst record. We'll see. I mean, San Diego does have a game in hand against them, but big time moves there in the standings for them. But yeah, exciting overall week. Some unexpected results, some new names there in the team of the week honorees. Should be interesting. But Vandy, this is the part that we have to get into. Part 2 of Bye-Mageddon. We got Carolina, Houston, Dallas, Utah, all on bye, only 4 matches. So this is probably another one of those very important waiver wire segments to talk about some of the guys that you need to stream as backups. And Maddie and I, like I said, Maddie doing the work even when he's not available to do the show today, sent me a list of guys that you can look out for that are playing and are on the teams that do have matches this week. I came up with a list as well. But the big question here, Vandy, before we get into those names, this was a hot topic on our Discord, and you being our in-house Utah Warriors fan, I want to talk about this before we move on to some of these options. And I think it comes at a timely point of the season because Utah is coming in on bye. But what the heck do you do with Joe Mano? Because he has not had a great performance so far, if I remember correctly.
He's only had two double-digit performances in weeks 4 and 6. That's when he came back from the injury, and since then he's been mediocre. But the thing is, he still gets a lot of meters. He's still relevant in the game. It's just the tries aren't coming. Last year it was the 120, 150, 200 meter games with 3 tries.
Yeah.
The tries aren't there right now for Utah. We're not scoring. Hell, we haven't scored in the first half in like 3 weeks.
So let me lay out the context for you. I've played this game with Maddie. He's coming off his worst game of the season. 1.6 fantasy points.
Yeah.
10 meters game.
Played half the game, basically. Again, hasn't scored double digits since round 6. You picked him with your first overall pick. Utah's going in a bye. You need a spot. What the heck do you do with Joe Mano? Damn, that's rough. That's brutal.
So now this is what I think.
I think it's different than what I went through with McAdee, because McAdee wasn't in the lineup. Mano's in the lineup. Yeah. He was playing up until this week full games. So
here, while you think, this is what I think, okay? And tell me if you agree with me. If you're a fantasy manager that somehow is sitting at 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 even. You're sitting in the 1-2 spot of your fantasy league, and you somehow have Joe Mano.
Yeah, I was gonna say
you probably hold on to him. Right?
Yeah.
You just need to wait to see if he comes back.
Yep.
But if you're on the fantasy playoff cusp, one of the big reasons why you're probably on the fantasy playoff cusp is because you've had Joe Mano.
Yep.
It might be time to cut ties because you need a win this week. He's not playing this week. I don't think you're getting anything for him in a trade. You could try, maybe go to your number one. You go to the guys that are in your first, second. You say, hey, I'll give you Joe Mano for a guy that's starting this week. That's maybe
even
a little
for
bit,
some fab. Now that you're into the end of the
little bit better caliber at the end of the year. That's not available on your waiver wire. Maybe that's the direction you have to go. That's how I think of it in my mind.
You know what the thing is? You hate to say it, but if I was stuck in this situation at where I'm at right now in the season, I'd like to say there's not a hope in hell, but you still got to try. You still got to push for it. So I would say you got to look at the whole team. Mano is doing very bad, but Utah's not doing great either. It's not like the opportunities aren't there, but Utah's putting up points. We're not putting up points. A big part of it is Joe Mano not putting up points. It was a lot of individual effort. He was sick on the wing. Now he doesn't even have the step he had last year, probably injury. But I guess where I'm getting at is if I was in this situation, I'd be dropping Joe Mano.
Imagine us saying that
on Bye-Mageddon. If you're chasing the playoffs, if you're in by what you would call a safe margin, I'd wait it out. I mean, you took him in the first round. The talent's there.
Yeah.
There's some foreign factor that we're not aware of.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to bring that up before we got into our waiver wire watch because
that was depressing, man.
He's been a hot topic for our Discord chat for our Joe Mano owners who definitely picked him with their either top 2 picks, which is pretty incredible. But let's get into some waiver wire advice here and some guys that you can look as options on the waiver wire for teams that you may have guys on Carolina, Houston, Dallas, or Utah. You're definitely going to have to take advantage of the waiver wire this time around. And I guess advice is don't be afraid. We're at the point of the season, to the same sentiment of Joe Mono. Do not be afraid to start dropping these on the cusp guys.
Yep.
Right? You need wins now. And if you have guys on Carolina, Houston, Dallas, or Utah that you're afraid that are going to get picked up, you're going to have to move on because you need a win this week. And if you don't have space on your roster, you're going to just have to move on and see what you can do. So let's start off here with the front rows. Like I said, for me, Peyton Talea Alalio is my guy. 25.2 fantasy points for San Diego. He is a guy that has been getting some good, solid playing time here as of late. He has back-to-back games where he's hovered around that 70-minute mark and has gotten 3 straight matches above 6 fantasy points. So as a streamer from a front row position, that is quite adequate for you. For Maddie, he sent me the name of Jared Adams, NOLA Gold. I mean, when you're scoring a try like that,
you gotta ride the high.
You got to ride the high, and he has the opportunity to probably do that again if he can. Doesn't get the minutes played. You're just banking on scoring that try, and he did that this past week. He has scored above 40 meters gained in the past 3 weeks straight in the matches that he's started. So he's guaranteeing you at least 4 fantasy points. So again, as streamers, you're good.
He's up against Chicago, who is letting up points.
Yeah. There you go. Moving on to the second row position. Got 2 options here. For me, it's Rick Rose for Miami. Miami coming off of a bye. He's a guy that I had mentioned earlier in the season that, hey, you may want to put fab on this guy because he might be a guy that may be maybe some value here late in the season as he establishes himself in that lineup as one of the younger guns here. He's now going off of his highest points scored at 6.2, which is pretty solid from the second row position, double-digit tackles in 4 of the last 5 matches. So as a baseline, he has not too bad. And coming off of a bye, I think there may be some room for him to do well. Maddie's got Tavita Nakali, another guy that's come up by of DC. Nakali has scored 49.7 fantasy points on the season. He has a double-digit fantasy performance twice this year, and he's coming off of before the bye 11.2 with double-digit tackles and 76 meters gained. So Tavita Nakali is a start here. For
playing a lot of
Maddie.
Minutes too.
Yeah, and Vanny, this lends the question here in terms of Bye-Mageddon. What is your approach when it comes to the front row and second row position? Because again, almost let that one slip there. What do you do here? I think if you're searching for wins, every point matters.
Yep.
So you're gonna have to drop the cuffs, guys, and just go for it. Like let's say you have, it's tough. Like, what if you have a Nick Suchon, right? That you've held on to. He started him. He scored a try last season, or you have a Devalt Kotza, and he hasn't had that. I know he's one of the league's leading try scorers, but he came off a match last week where he didn't do too great. Dallas not scoring many points. He's on bye this week. I mean, you're gonna have to come. Like that's a position that I'm in, right? I had Devalt Kotza. I'm right outside of the playoff picture. I don't think I have the luxury of just not playing a front row position. There's going to be a decision to be made of dropping one of those kind of marquee guys for a guy that may put you up 4 points to get you a win this week. That might be a decision you have. What's your thoughts, Vandy? Playoff cusp, worth to leave a spot position open, or are you dropping some of these bigger time names that maybe are on bye this week to possibly make sure that you have a guy in your lineup? It's tough.
That's brutal. That's where the fantasy, the stress keeps you up at night. You're not even getting sleep, really.
And I will say, right, like you probably want to look at the other options to drop. It's tough to hold 2 front row positions.
That question alone comes with a caveat. Are you 1 spot out, 2 spot out?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So let's say Vandy, you're in my spot.
We have 3 weeks left. Okay, if you are in battling, I would say if you're battling, no. Let's say you're tied. You're all tied for 6-7 wins. then it's tough. If you have 6 wins, 5 wins, if you're down 2 wins, you have to. I don't think there's another choice there.
Okay, so let me give you my shoes, Vandy. So I'm sitting at a 6-6 record. I'm in 7th place, right outside of playoff spot, begrudgingly behind my brother, who's up by me by 1 tie. Do I drop? I have Default Kotza. Do I drop Kotza for a guy that's playing this week because I need a win?
See you. God, that's brutal.
Right?
That's brutal.
And that's a decision that fantasy managers are going to have to make, right? Going into this week, because at some point, there's no value to holding a guy that's not going to get you any points. You need wins now, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm going into next week. I'm facing Eagles overseas, who, if I beat, I can push myself into a playoff spot. There's a lot on the line. I don't know, man. I think if I'm on the cusp, or if I need to protect a playoff spot, I have no qualms in dropping a guy that's not playing this week. A Pita Aneasu, a Default Kotza, any of these guys that are on good teams, and hope that when the waiver wire comes back around the following week, or no one picks them up before them on bye, that I can snatch them back up.
What you do. There's only one answer to this. You don't bid. You wait till damn near 2 minutes until that game starts. A minute. And you make a waiver and hope to God nobody picks him up in that last minute.
That's true.
Because
but you still, that's a good point.
You drop Kote, somebody's getting Kote.
Right. And that's a good point.
Who else? If you drop Jake Turnbull, Anthem's on by.
Yeah.
You're doing it the last possible minute.
And I mean, and that's what's tough too, because there's a trade-off, right? Because you're trading off the hope that no one's going to have the chance to pick one of these guys up,
but now
to the likelihood, because it's Bye-Mageddon, the likelihood that people are going to be putting waiver bids on Jared Adams.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And everything's going to be inflated in price this week.
Yep.
And you might miss out on that, because those are guys that are probably not going to stick around all the way up to 2 minutes before kickoff.
Exactly. So you miss out on that. But if you want him back, that's the only solution.
You still might lose him at the end of the day too, because the waiver wire, the way that Fab works, you might not get him back, because you might not have enough Fab like me to get that guy back. So, just that thought process, because I know a lot of fantasy managers are going to go through that week. But I think that's a big question, especially for the front row, second row, probably the scrum half and fly half positions too, because they're just so, maybe more so the scrum half, just because they're low point scoring guys. But we'll see. Hopefully you're not getting too hit hard by a lot of these guys all being on bye this week. But I know there are fantasy managers that are being hit with byes, injuries, everything all at once. And it's tough to put a full 10-person lineup out there. All right, back row position and some options there. I'm going to put out there Hugh Taylor with now the injury to Rickard Hadding. Hugh Taylor has had a pretty solid fantasy point performances for the Seattle Seawolves as of late, and that only now magnifies and gets bigger with them facing or them losing Rickard Hadding. The dependence on Hugh Taylor is going to be even more. Hugh Taylor has been doing pretty solid so far in the last. He's coming off a 3 double-digit fantasy point performances. 2 of them were starts, 13.4 in round 11, 10 in round 12, double-digit tackles in every single match that he's played in except for one. I like Hugh Taylor as a nice streaming option this week, and even potentially a guy that you hold on to. Like, if you're the Rickard Hadding owner, like, I'm going in on Hugh Taylor.
Yeah, you have to.
You know what I mean? Like, I want that handcuff there, and get him there. For Matthew, it's Tupua Fungia, who's doing fantastic as of late. We mentioned him in the thing, 17.2 fantasy points for him, coming off back-to-back weeks where he's done really, really well. Back-to-back weeks with tries. He's got probably the higher ceiling than Hugh Taylor, so you might want to get in on him again. A nice little stream option there as well. Scrum half position, Maddie and I are on the same page. Thomas Kubeli, Miami's coming off of a bye. We saw Kubeli come off of the bench the week before, I believe, and the likelihood is that he'll be starting this next week here, coming off of that injury. Hasn't really had that much of a fantasy impact so far in the first 4 matches that he started in, but I mean, again, he's better than having no one. So bring Kubeli, see what he does. And we'll go from there. And then from a fly half position, again, another position that's very, very kind of sparse. You're really just throwing darts out there. And a lot of the guys are taken. But for me and Maddie, if no one scooped them up last week, Kean Meaden, again, he's a signing that Chicago hasn't appeared yet in the lineup, but we'll see whether or not he's their fly half option with Adrian Karls playing well at the fly half position. But again, I think the optimum lineup, at least in our eyes, is they bring Kean Meaden at fly half, move Karls back to the fullback, get Cardi out of the lineup. Billy Meeks will be back. And you have
Cardi's
your center guys.
No good.
Yeah. So you'll see from there. All right. A couple center options here. Matt's going Matthias Orlando, the new signing for Miami. Again, coming off the bye, the likelihood that he inserts himself in the lineup is going to be interesting. For me, I got Seth Purdy, and this is more of an analytics look at it. San Diego has actually been allowing one of the highest points against from the center position. I believe the third worst in terms of allowing points against fantasy points for the center position. Seth Purdy hasn't really done a crazy amount, but again, streaming option. Not many options, 32.6 fantasy points on the season so far. He might be a plug and play guy. Again, there's some other bigger names to look out for. You might be looking at Marcel Brocky, who might be available for you. Some other center options there. There might be guys. Let me pull up here. Other guys to keep an eye out for. Lasik is on bye. William Talatina, a guy that's coming off bye, he may have been dropped there. So just have a look. But again, if your center position is pretty barren, I would definitely look at Seth Purdy as just kind of a stream and play. I'm not dropping anyone significant for him. Not putting any fab, but we'll see. Moving on to the back three position, Alex Horan for me on San Diego. He's been starting at fullback for the Legion. And then they also go up against RFC Los Angeles. Again, another matchup based. Los Angeles has been allowing a lot of points to the back three position. Yes, I expect Horan to take advantage of that. He's now got back-to-back starts at the fullback position, coming off his highest of the season with 12 fantasy points with 81 meters gained and a try assist. So he might be a flyer for you going there. And then Mackey has, after a double-digit fantasy point performance that would have been even higher despite the yellow card, Julian Dominguez of the Chicago Hounds has kind of been in and out of the lineup, but if he starts to establish himself there, Julian Dominguez might be solid. And then for defense set piece, Old Glory DC for us. They might have been dropped off the bye. They've been a very they've emphasized the maul and the front row position there to score tries. They've been taking advantage of that. 22 fantasy points. Also some inside knowledge for you, Vandy. Martin Vaca, who's obviously been a big engine for that. He's been dealing with injury, which is the reason why he's been in and out of the lineup. So got some inside scoop from AKP there to keep you posted. I said that Vandy needs to know.
Any chance we know if he's healthy now?
I guess we'll see. Coming off the bye, I would be surprised if he wasn't in the starting lineup. But we'll see from there.
I'm done with the Vaca experiment.
The VOC experiment. All right. Well, let's go on now, Vandy, to our Week 13 preview, and let's start giving some of our predictions. What can I say? Ryan continues to run away with this thing because who guessed New England? Or in this past week when the other guys picked San Diego? Ryan did. Yeah, but so did you, Vandy. But the one that had transferred over was I had to trust in my Dallas boys. I should have trusted them on my betting too. But got that win there as well. So I'm now 44-17-2 on the season. Maddie 42-19-2. Vandy, you're starting to trail a little bit. You're kind of approaching up, but now you're 37-24-2. So
I'm above 500. That's all that matters.
You're above 500. So you've been doing all right. But again, Bye-Mageddon in this one. Let's talk about it. Carolina, Houston, Dallas, Utah on bye. 4 matches this week. So again, there's going to be a whole slew of players that aren't going to be available for you. Make sure you're taking advantage of that waiver wire. But let's get into the very first one on the Friday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, a late one. The Seawolves taking on the off the bye Old Glory DC squad. The Seawolves 8-3, Old Glory 4-4-2. Seawolves coming off that loss against Dallas. Like I said, Old Glory off the bye. I'm expecting a big bounce back game from the Seawolves.
Yeah, I was going to say they're not dropping.
Bounce back game. So I think I'm counting in on a lot of my Seawolves guys from a fantasy perspective. I'm not counting out Old Glory DC guys. It's going to be interesting to see what the lineup is coming out of the bye. Are we going to see Graydon Bowd at the fly half position, or Jason Robertson going to slot back in there? Is Vaca healthy? I think that has a big indicator on how well Aurora DC is going to stay competitive on this team. But I think there are going to be fantasy points to be had. And I think a lot of it's going to be come from the Seattle Seawolves side. I'm locking in all my guys. I think Hugh Taylor, like I mentioned, is my waiver wire pickup, is a solid start this week. Whoever's starting at the hooker position, I think is going to be solid for the Seawolves as well. Lock in Dan Creel. It's always a tricky one to see who's going to be starting at the back three position, but whoever it is, Tony Pulu, Jade Styling, any of those guys, it'll be interesting to see who comes in there. Maddie is going Seattle in this one. I think I got to go Seattle in this one.
Yeah, me too. I can't see them dropping two.
All right. Well, all of us on the board on the same one. We'll see what happens in that first Friday night matchup there. I think the big one too is Seattle's at home. And I think the late match is going to play in Seattle's favor. So we'll see there. Second matchup on the Saturday now. Miami Sharks 3-7 taking on the New England Free Jacks 7-3, 7 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. I think I'm playing all my New England Free Jacks in this one. I think this might be probably the biggest lopsided win of the weekend if I had to put my money on it. I don't even think as an underdog I would even play a pick here on the Miami Sharks, but I know the New England Free Jacks are injury ridden right now. We'll see. I don't think it's going to happen if Reese McDonald's is back. The status of Jason Putros, I think it's still a couple weeks out, but they were able to get it done against the Chicago Hounds. I think they'll easily be able to get it done against the Miami Sharks. Maddie goes New England. I go New England. Bandy?
Yes, sir.
All on the same board. I have a feeling that this is going to be another one of those weeks where we're all on the same page here. But anyways, that bodes well for me to stay in front. We'll see how that goes. All right, the third matchup of the weekend. First on Sunday, the Chicago Hounds at home at 5-5-1, taking on the NOLA Gold 6-4. I think out of all the matchups, this is probably the hardest one to pick.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole bunch of mirage happening here. Because we've bet against the NOLA Gold now 2 straight weeks. They're finding a way to win. 2 p.m. Eastern time kickoff here. Chicago, NOLA. It's going to be an interesting one. I think it's going to be a back and forth affair. We'll see how NOLA does and how healthy they become. But I'm so scarred by this NOLA team. It's hard for me to go with them.
Utah didn't play great, and they still didn't score any points in the second half. So
it's true. It's true. Maddie's going Chicago. I actually like my assets of Chicago in this one.
Yeah.
I do like NOLA's assets, though not as much. I would still pick NOLA assets over Miami assets. I'm still starting Ed Fido. We'll see if Rodney Iona is in the lineup.
Yeah.
But we'll go from there. Again, you don't have many options with Bye-Mageddon. But like you, Vandy, I'm going Chicago as well. I think we're all on the same board with this one. All right, and then last matchup of the week with our fourth matchup, 6 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, RFC Los Angeles at home in the Battle of California, taking on the San Diego Legion 6-4. Los Angeles, they've been on a tear recently with Co coming back, 3-6-2, back-to-back wins, win over Anthem. San Diego Legion, though, also kind of been growing and getting better, though the loss to the New England Free Jacks, but they could have very well won that one too. This one will be an interesting one, I think. A lot more interesting than I think that people may give it credit for. But I think there's going to be points scored in this one. And I just think at the end, San Diego is probably going to score more of them. Maddie's going San Diego. I'm going San Diego. But I'm still starting all my out Los Angeles guys. Again, they're susceptible to center scoring. I think they'll be able to score in the back three. I think guys like Co are going to have their day there. I would still start Jordan Chait. I think the kicking game is going to be big in this one. But San Diego, I also like my options there. So Maddie's San Diego. I'm San Diego. Vandy, what are you going?
Yeah, I got to go San Diego.
All right. Not as exciting on this one. I think we're all going the same way. But see, this is the last time we had this was in week 11. And we said
got smoked.
We got smoked, and we said that this was going to be another easy week, that we know the outcome of all these matches. And I've learned my lesson. We're probably going to miss out on some of these. Probably still going to put a parlay on all 4 of these because I like my picks in this one. I'm confident with them.
Yeah,
that's probably going to make it go the other way. But we'll see. We'll see not if there's one of these teams that shock us here coming out of week 13's Bye-Mageddon. But let's wrap up the show here, Vandy, with our new segment, like we mentioned each and every week. Triple D, Devin's Degenerate Dambles. And Vandy, you've been doing pretty good. Like we mentioned, I think we know what options are going this week, but you've been doing not too bad. You've put $110 down in total here so far in your Major League Rugby betting experience. You've won $133.82. So you're $23 in the plus.
Yeah.
To put things into perspective and to give you a little bit more credit, it's not as easy as it seems. So I have bet around $75. Okay. I have won. What do I want to say? I think I'm back at I'm negative overall in net $43.95. So I've been losing a significant amount of money over the course that I've been keeping up with you. So you have been doing very, very well.
Funny how you beat me in the weekly picks and then lose money, eh?
And losing the things. I know they need to come up with like DraftKings daily fantasy lineups, because then I'd be making money there.
Well, you know what the big thing is? It's you got to look at the money lines. You know, if there's money to be made, sometimes you get some wild ones. Like I could see, oh, this one's at home for Chicago, but I could see Chicago being like plus 300 for this one somehow.
It's true. Yeah. It's true.
But
but it could go the other way too, because again, you said it last week that there has been a lot of emphasis on the home teams. So I mean, if you pick Chicago, and that's a good example, you pick Chicago to win this one, your picks. But I would imagine that NOLA Gold comes in it as the underdog.
Yeah, like if there was, and the other way too, if it was plus 300 on NOLA, I'm taking it.
And that's where I think I'm still learning, is because you got to find the value.
Yeah,
it's not always about what your heart says of who's actually going to win.
You forgot one part of this is called Degenerate.
That's right. That's right. You got to leave all ethics at the front door when it comes to this. But so Vandy, give a scoop in what you gave. I'll give a scoop on mine. So I bet $25 this week. I went a parlay between Utah winning, Seattle winning. Utah winning, Seattle winning, Houston winning, and Los Angeles winning. I went with those games there, and I obviously didn't New England winning in that one, not the Anthem game.
Yeah.
I bet Anthem winning, and it was close, and I would have won bank on that one. I ended up cashing in on New England, and I was freaking out. We talked about it at the beginning. We were freaking out about that late kind of decision on who was winning that game. Yep. But that ended up saving my week in terms of me getting into the plus there, and not being as burnt as I was. But for you, Vandy, burnt on a couple, but you came through on the New England Free Jack saved you.
Yeah, I did a little. I did a 3-leg parlay. I did Seattle, Houston, and NOLA. You know, I don't know. I can't believe Seattle lost that for me. But anyways,
I know.
This is what I'm talking about though. I put $5 on Anthem, and it was because I got a plus 550 odd for that. Plus 550,
and they were close.
So, that's what I mean. You throw like a couple. Like I threw $5 on it. When you see odds like that, you could look at a team like LA and be like, they could steal one.
Yeah.
You know, would I bet on them for 9 out of 10 games? No. But when you get odds like that, when you see a money line like that, you got to give it a go. And then the other one was I took the Free Jacks winning. And then that's where
which was surprising, because that's another one of those picks, which was there was value.
That was plus 200.
San Diego was going in as the favorite.
That's what I mean. Like you look at the Free Jacks as a team, sure they were a little banged up, but
yeah.
Ultimately, pretty good team to have plus 200 odds on.
Yeah, there you go. Well, hey, that thinking has got you to plus $23 on this season.
And I'll let you know a little sneak for this one. I'm parlaying that for sure. I'm going, Seattle, New England, Chicago, Legion. Boom, easy parlay there. Now, I probably for a lock, I'm saying your Free Jacks are a lock here.
My guess is the favorites are going to be Seattle, New England, NOLA, San Diego.
Yeah.
So where are your value?
I bet you Chicago will be the favorite just because they're at home.
Or I mean, yes, I think Chicago will be the favorite over NOLA. Yeah. So I think there's value.
Now, I probably, depending on the odds here, I'm probably also going to bet NOLA.
And that's what I think. I think the value picks here are going to be NOLA probably. And there might be value in RFC Los Angeles. Well, I think you might get really good odds on that.
I think your best value is going to come from Old Glory. It's not out of the question for them to steal this win. They're going to look at standings. They're going to look at the home game. And I guarantee there's going to be a plus 550, plus 600.
See, the thing is, I think Old Glory DC has no shot in being Seattle.
after what Dallas just did, I'm never gonna say there's no.
That's
shot
true. That's true. That's true. That's true.
Because if Old Glory played Dallas, that's even a tough one.
That's true. That's true.
So,
all right. So we got a par so far.
Here.
Vandy's Devin's Degenerate, Dambles. We got a parlay. We probably got a NOLA bet in there somewhere. And then who's your favorite lock? Probably New England over Miami, right? All right. All right, Vandy. Have you had fun? $23. I mean, you can't complain about that, right?
It's bought me a case of beer so far.
There you go. And that's all that matters, man. I'm glad you're finding value, no pun intended, in a part of this show, whether it's weekly challenge or lineup or Devin's Degenerate Dambles. We created this for you, man.
Hey, appreciate it for you.
All right. Well, hey, jam-packed episode, Vandy. Great job. I think there's, again, good luck on everyone with Bye-Mageddon. We've provided you here with the survival kit. Try to do your best. Sleep.
Make sure to eat breakfast. And we'll see you on Sunday. Or see you on Monday.
I'll finish it off with this. Is that Vandy, you said it best in our Discord community. Someone asked, is everyone ready for Bye-Mageddon? And you said,
I said, I don't think anyone would be quite ready for Bye-Mageddon.
I don't think anyone is ever ready for Bye-Mageddon, and we'll see. It's usually the case. All right. Well, for Devin, Vandy, Vanderpool, for Matt Yee, for myself, Ryan Yee, we'll see you next Tuesday on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.